All right, we are here back with Richie Mars. What's going on, buddy?
It's going, man. How you doing?
Good. Are you sick of looking at my face? This is like the third video we've done in about a week.
No, not at all, man. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Cool. Well, we'll see. I'll take your word for that for now. But anyways, we're going to come back to you tonight with a review of NXT and AEW Tuesday Night War, rekindled in a way. But I figured, hey, let's do a top 10 moments of the actual quote unquote war, or so to speak, war, or whatever, from the past, from October 2019 to what? March, April 2021. Is that when WWE pulled the plug on NXT on Wednesday nights? Is that when it happened?
Yep, it was March 30th, 2021.
Okay.
That was the last NXT episode.
Oh, yeah. And that was the takeover at Full Sail or the PC or whatever. And they did like a 2-night event, I believe, on Stand and Deliver or something like that.
Yep, it was Stand and Deliver. They made a press release on March 30th, 2021, saying that NXT will be moving to Tuesdays indefinitely. The final score of AEW versus NXT is AEW 60,
Ooh.
NXT 10.
Ooh, wow. All right, so a slobber knocker right there. Some would see. I'm curious. Quick vibe. Do you think that WWE is angling NXT to go back at AEW in the future?
It's one of those things where I don't think WWE is actively seeking it. They're kind of in their highest grossing profit era, so I don't think they feel the need to squash out any competition. I think now is the time for AEW to prove that it can have the staying power of a WCW, of a second alternative to WWE. So I think the ball's in AEW's court on what they should do in order to prosper further.
I wouldn't rule it out. Triple H kind of being the lead voice there. He's been one to kind of be aggressive and go after him. He might. This is a check mark against him in many's eyes, and that might be a wrong he might want to correct. TV negotiation rights coming up. I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't necessarily rule it out, but I would be surprised if they actually did go forward with it.
Again, crazier things have happened, so who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
we'll have SmackDown versus AEW next. Who knows?
Who knows? Ooh, I don't know how that would go for them. But anyways, Richie, so this is going to be the head-to-head matchup, the top 5 moments from each brand, going back and forth, 5 NXT, 5 from AEW, ping pong all the way down to 1. And these are the moments that we felt, without really doing our homework, the memories, the moments that we remembered fondest from each brand during this era. All right, let's get going. Let's flip a coin. Heads. Let's start with NXT.
Let's do it.
All right, Richie, coming in first at number 5 from the NXT, just the way in general. Why is the way number 5, and is there a significant moment that you can think of?
The way is number 5 because it's a group that I don't think anybody expected at all, because you have a pure babyface in Johnny Gargano, who was probably the heart and soul of NXT after Sami Zayn left NXT, and all of a sudden now he's become this dastardly character after having his final match against Tommaso Ciampa. Some say lagged on a little bit longer than necessary. There was
that
a
empty
long
arena
match.
was not fair.
Yeah. and then it culminated in Candice LeRae joining her husband, tricking Tommaso Ciampa to get Johnny Gargano that ever elusive win over Tommaso Ciampa. And just Johnny Gargano with the North American Championship, making that championship mean something to the brand of NXT, because it was still a fairly new championship. He's held it before, but this was his time to revolve that division around him. And also the additions of Austin Theory, who recently came off of Raw television, and Indy Hartwell also enhanced not only their characters, but Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae's characters as well. And then the Dexter Lumis stuff that came later on really made everything so much better for the way. And Johnny Gargano's over-the-topness just was perfection.
Yes, this feels like there's something they would love to rekindle, but I'm unsure they know how to or how to approach it, really. So I don't know if it's done. And honestly, it was really good for Austin Theory to kind of catch his footing within the way here, as he was a guy that was rather uninteresting and I don't want to say floundering on the NXT brand, but kind of a guy that they used as a job guy in a way. And his future was, and his upside was so much more brighter from a long-term aspect from a lot of people on NXT. And this was really a stepping stone for him to find his way, quote unquote. And perhaps maybe it's not a bad solution for him to kind of find a way in the future. I don't know here if the way is the correct way to do that, but he could find his way with something else on the main roster. So I don't know. The Way is definitely a memorable group, but I'm just curious if NXT is its landing spot or if we'll see it again in the future.
Hey man, never say never. Austin Theory is the 150 million hitman, I believe. So I think he's doing all right for himself.
I know. I'm a Theory fan. I just on the other side of the fence real quick. But
I got you.
I got you. All right. So that's the NXT's fifth moment / just kind of group or aura vibe in general is The Way. All right. And number 5 for the AEW side of things here is Eddie Kingston's promo on Jon Moxley. What was so memorable about this to you, Richie?
What was memorable to me is Jon Moxley was solidifying himself as the ace of AEW during the pandemic era, and it's hard to get invested in matches when there's no crowd. Slowly but surely, crowds were sort of coming back to Daly's place, but what made Eddie Kingston's match interesting was he was main eventing Full Gear with Jon Moxley. And with Eddie Kingston, he isn't really what people had in mind for a number one contender on one of 4 AEW's pay-per-views. So when Eddie Kingston came out, just said, cut the music, and he's just going off how he deserves this opportunity because, one, if you remember, it was, I believe, the Casino Battle Royal. He went through the ropes, not over the top. So he had a legitimate claim to challenge for the AEW championship. And the history with Jon Moxley, with Moxley coming out and saying he promised Eddie's mother to keep Eddie out of trouble, and that just like set Eddie off. And Eddie Kingston just high on emotions, and it just seemed like the perfect rivalry to solidify this feud, this friendship, and it's still going strong to this day between these two. And I just thought it was a beautiful launching point for an introduction for people who didn't really know their history, and now they know everything about it.
Supposedly, this promo is the one that got Kingston Promo of the Year in the Wrestling Observer newsletter voters. This is a very emotional promo. I remember emotion and just Kingston just really in his bag, just out there laying his heart on the line and just showing why he has so much natural charisma to connect with the fans. So unfortunately, this match ended in kind of a dud, no pun intended, but the promo definitely was not one of the biggest promos in company's history.
I did like their I Quit match a lot. I thought it was a good way to culminate the feud, but the what was it? The barbed wire match with Kenny Omega? Yeah, that kind of that was a little bit of a middle there. And if you want to hear the story behind all that, read Jon Moxley's book. He actually has a pretty funny story about why that happened.
All right, Richie. Number 4 on the NXT side here is Keith Lee as your North American and NXT champion. Keith Lee was the North American championship coming into the Great American Bash. He faced Adam Cole. Adam Cole was champion for over a year. What do you remember about this besides Sangha destroying or spoiling it on Twitter or whatever? That's what I remembered. I just remembered how beautiful of a moment this was in a culmination and a really good pivot off of the Velveteen Dream here to go to Keith Lee. So those are the things I remember about this. What do you remember, Richie?
It's like you said, it's a culmination of a lot of things. When the NXT AEW wars first started, that's when we saw the emergence of Keith Lee. We saw him win the North American title from Roderick Strong. We saw him at his Survivor Series match, lasting the final 2 against Roman Reigns. We saw him go toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar during this time. And all of it was culminating to his biggest win in WWE, being the NXT Championship against Adam Cole, the longest reigning NXT champion at that point in time. And things were looking up for Keith Lee. I know a lot of people like to meme on him now for the tweet he said about Walter and stuff. There's a little bit of a backstory behind that of why he tweeted it. But at the same time, we can't forget how hot he was during those 6, 8, 9 months he was in NXT, being pretty much positioned as the next big call up to WWE.
Yeah, it was really a kind of surprising rise too. It was a rise. It feels like it was from a main office call, really, because he was presented on NXT. He was presented as a guy, kind of similar to Matt Riddle, and Matt Riddle and really even Keith Lee were guys that were like, all right, they're in NXT. Everyone goes to NXT, but I see a bigger future in the main event. The main event gets eyes on him at the probably leading into the Survivor Series, and was just like, he's our guy. Out of all these guys you presented us, out of Damian Priest, Matt Riddle, Tommaso Ciampa, whoever you presented to us in this match, we're going with Keith Lee. NXT needs some shine going into the AEW War, and I think they did a great job of presenting him. Perhaps went a little long, waiting all the way till July, but they had a story to tell with Adam Cole, as he was the longest reigning NXT champion. And I'm not mad at them for waiting on Keith Lee, but I'm glad he also got this moment. And he was called up about 2 months later. They made the announcement at SummerSlam this year in August that he was heading to the main roster. So he was not your champion or your lead guy on NXT for a very long time. So it was quite the transitional year for Keith Lee here at the end of 19 leading into 20, but it was unfortunately the height of his career so far and perhaps overall. But overall, this is a great moment here, and Sangha couldn't even ruin this one. And number 4 from the AEW side, it's Sting with the WCW callback from Tony Schiavone. Sting, winter is coming, 2020. In the midst of the pandemic. Is this the first show that there was kind of a crowd for AEW?
I'm not sure if it was the first one, but it was definitely one of the specials of AEW that they did during the winter time.
I'm confused. This is at Daly's place.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm confused. COVID's 2020 is March, and then this is January. That folks, that's on me. That's a CB. Coach is bad right there. Yeah, this is a big memorable moment. This is like a really sticking point for AEW, where they really Sting outkicked his coverage overall, in my opinion, with AEW, and it started with this fantastic debut.
Yeah, like you said, it was a very fantastic debut, and it was cool to see Sting go back to the network that made him into a superstar for superstar status. And around this time, we were hearing rumors that Sting didn't re-sign with WWE due to the Legends deal, and they weren't letting him wrestle for neck injury reasons. And now he's back on TBS, TNT, and Tony Schiavone's on the call, and Sting saying everything's a little bit different, but now everything's a little bit more familiar. And now we got the nice little mentor ship of Sting to Darby Allin, which I think has helped tremendously, and it has given legs to Sting's career, to a career that we thought was over and done with once he ended with Seth Rollins.
Yeah, really, like I said earlier, outkicked its coverage with Sting here in AEW. Just a great way to show how to use a legend, really, and get the most out of it with the establishment of Darby, and really just it's not a cheap contract, and he's getting his money worth. So that's good on them for this one. All right, back with NXT here. The punt hurled around the world. Pat McAfee punting the shit out of Adam Cole in the late summer of 2020. I remember watching this live. This was some time after Adam Cole lost the championship to Keith Lee, and Pat McAfee was flirting with NXT, and he showed up on NXT and punted the shit out of Adam Cole after Adam Cole was antagonizing him, being a spoiled brat, and this was the perfect way to switch roles here with Adam Cole and turn him into a babyface. Now, very similar to Dominic Mysterio at Cash the Castle, where Dominic punted Edge and turned heel on his father. When Pat McAfee punted Adam Cole, I was just like, wow, this is the perfect recipe. This is definitely going to work. So, Richie, what did your overall thoughts on Adam Cole and Pat McAfee here?
Well, we've seen celebrities in wrestling for a long amount of time now, going back to 80s, 70s, you name it. But what made this different was that now you have somebody who is like Adam Cole, who is pretty much the ultimate utility player at this point in NXT. Like, you could probably throw him in a ring with a broomstick, and I think he'll probably have a 5-star match with it, as the saying goes. But Pat McAfee's willingness to be the bad guy when celebrities coming into a guest show, they naturally want to be very beloved. But Pat McAfee was one of those guys who got it right away. And being one of the only guys who could probably make Adam Cole into a babyface at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat McAfee being a legit athlete, the punter, and just like punted Adam Cole, and Adam Cole's sell was beautiful on this punt kick. And I think this was a great point in Adam Cole's career and a great introduction to Pat McAfee to the WWE audience, as we would hear a lot from him from many years to come.
Yes, great introduction is the correct way to go with this. It's interesting too because he was low key rejected on the panels. Kind of, he had the shorts, the jorts. With Michael Cole, he wasn't vibing. He shows up a year later in NXT with no fans. The internet's kind of like, who's this kind of guy? He's kind of an asshole. They're gonna push him down our throats, and he just fit like a glove. And like I said earlier, I just knew he was long for this world. And he can, as he was here this weekend, he continues to show up whenever he can. So I don't know. I dig it. I love it. All right, number 3 here on the AEW side is Cody Rhodes versus Brody Lee in a dog collar match for the TNT Championship. Leading into this match, we had a Cody Rhodes was your champ, and he was squashed by Brody Lee in a very surprising moment where Brody Lee just really established the Dark Order, helped the Dark Order, and took over and really left Cody Rhodes laying. And we were like, what's going on with Cody Rhodes? Cody reemerges with black hair. Kind of a miss. You kind of forget that he had the black hair. I didn't really remember that until researching this, or very little researching this. And also, I don't know, man, this was grueling, bloody, and just a awesome kick-ass match that delivered. Was this an anniversary show for AEW?
It was Chris Jericho's 30th year anniversary show.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on this match and this overall feud in a way? And also, we didn't really want to touch on them remembering Brody Lee in January 2021. That is bigger than this whole list, so we just kind of want to bring that up here, where it won't be on the list. But we wanted to kind of just mention it while we were here on the dog collar match. Is this Brody Lee's actual last match too?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So what does this match mean to you?
This match is a defining point in AEW Dynamite just because you have this championship, a TNT championship. We're not very sure what that is. Before this match, it was about the open challenges, and I like my fair share of open challenges, but it seems to be, at least nowadays, more of a crutch to get a champion on the show and in a match. Here, it was the actual first literal blood feud for the TNT championship to set that tone, to set that bar, to see what that championship means to the rest of the roster. And Cody Rhodes and Brody Lee were both the perfect people to show how far you need to go in order to earn this championship. And you have a dog collar match, which hasn't been seen on mainstream wrestling television since probably, I guess, the 80s, 70s, maybe. You know, it's hard to say because the dog collar match is such a brutal type of match that these two were the perfect people to introduce that match. And again, unfortunately, it was Brody Lee's last match, but what a match to end it on, and what a match to add to the legacy of AEW and the TNT Championship.
I will say, I do recall my boy Greg the Hammer Valentine being in the stands watching this one.
Yeah.
So a nice symbolization there. Was Piper and Valentine from 83 Starrcade the last dog collar match on American pay-per-view / TV?
Mainstream, I know Ring of Honor has done a couple, but I think that was the last one. I could be mistaken, though.
Interesting. All right, well, someone let us know in the comments. All right, number 2 on NXT here is Shayna Baszler versus Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship. I believe this is the last NXT show in 2019. Richie, I don't think this is the last time that NXT won, but this is the last time NXT significantly won. Am I right?
Yeah, this was the end of NXT's longest viewership streak at 3 shows. Okay. So this was the ending of that and the beginning of AEW's dominance in viewership for the entirety of the Wednesday Night Wars.
Okay, and was this head-to-head versus the Dark Order, like punching thing?
I don't recall, but the timeline might line up.
Yeah, because I know that was right before the holiday break, and that's kind of where Tony took over as kind of not taking suggestions anymore from the EVP from a creative standpoint, and it was fully Tony's vision, I believe. So this is a pivotal show, and not just for all that stuff, but this is really a stapling moment to solidify Rhea Ripley as the next thing in the women's division that we see right now.
You're absolutely right, because Rhea Ripley at this time was gaining traction. I believe she headed the women's NXT team at Survivor Series. She
Mhm.
headed a team at War Games. So you knew she was in for bigger and better things. And with that said, the NXT women's title reign getting off of the Shayna Baszler train, and now we're going on to the Rhea Ripley train. And NXT had a brand new main woman star, and this was probably the perfect time, perfect place for Rhea Ripley to capture the women's championship. It's unfortunate that the women's championship itself didn't, or the reign rather, didn't really kind of gain traction or momentum as we would like it to. But again, good things come to those who wait, and present day, she's doing phenomenally.
Yes, and this would lead to a big WrestleMania match with Charlotte at WrestleMania 36, supposed to be at that Raymond James Stadium, but it was the best match in the PC era at WrestleMania. So, give and a take, highs and lows. So, a missed opportunity not being at WrestleMania coming out of this big win, but still symbolizing a great match at WrestleMania, the best match at WrestleMania 36. All right, coming in here, Richie, at number 2 is the third episode of Dynamite here. It is the Cody Rhodes Ellis Island promo. Now, Richie, was this before the brawl, the walking brawl that was very memorable, or did this lead to the walking brawl that was in the same episode? You mind clarifying with me, or do you remember?
If my memory is correct, and I'm not sure if it is, I think it led to the brawl.
The same episode?
I think it led to the brawl, same episode. If not, then like shortly after, that's when the brawl happened.
So we talked about emotion with Eddie Kingston. When I think of this promo, I think of pure emotion. I think this is the promo that Cody Rhodes, I think this is the promo that was shown to Vince McMahon to sell him as Cody Rhodes is your next top guy. Fly to his house, solidify him, get him back home, and make him the next top guy. I think this promo was excellent. And I think this was, unfortunately, being so early into Dynamite, the peak of the Cody Rhodes character on AEW.
You could definitely say that. This is kind of the beginning of the Codyverse, as a lot of people like to deem upon it. It because with Cody, his strength around AEW at this time were definitely his interviews. Because besides probably someone like Jericho, he's the only one who had that experience of these long interviews to sell this match. And this was the promo that declared that AEW is like Ellis Island for all the professional wrestlers, all the rejects from WWE, all the people who can be creative, who are telling this is what you have to do. This is the promo that set the tone for what AEW is. And with all of that, and Cody Rhodes adding at the end, it might have been this promo or a different promo, but if he didn't beat Chris Jericho for the world championship, he would not challenge for the world heavyweight championship as long as he was active in AEW Dynamite. I know there was a lot of controversy with that decision, but overall, this promo set the tone of what the mentality and spirituality AEW is.
Real quick, was that statement of never challenging for that world title again the wrong move creatively?
It's it's a pro and con kind of mood. Pro because since Cody Rhodes was an EVP, and he's seeing like what his dad went through, being the booker and being the champion, and seeing people who are bookers becoming the champion. I think he was very hyper aware of that, and I don't think he wanted his first real world championship to be because he was the boss of the promotion or one of the bosses of the promotion. And I don't think he wanted to taint that legacy. That being said, it does handcuff you creatively,
Yeah.
never challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship, So he had a certain ceiling as a guy who would always work with the new guy who would come in from either WWE or the independents, and then they would go on to bigger and better things, and then Cody would kind of stay in his bubble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the pro and con situation of it. You could agree with the stipulation, you could disagree with it, but there's going to be pros and cons of whatever the decision was going to be at the end of the day.
I think it was a miss. I think in the moment it added great stakes and really established AEW as a wow, this is hot type of thing with that Jericho feud instantly. So I think it helped from that aspect. But long term, I think you see the damage with what happened. He really turned into the gatekeeper instead of the top guy that he really could have and should have been. As you can see, he's very capable of it right now.
Mhm.
All right, Richie. And the number one moment for NXT, Finn Balor re-debuting on NXT. This followed a stellar Adam Cole versus Matt Riddle match. I believe I went 4.25. I might even went 4.5 on it. It's just excellent. I rewatched it. When I rewatched it, I was like, all right, it's not as good as I first gave it, but I was blown away live. It captured my interest and my attention. Adam Cole and Matt Riddle absolutely delivered, but not to be overshadowed, it reintroduced Finn Balor with a buzz cut, being away since kind of losing to The Fiend at SummerSlam, 3-4 months earlier. He was refocused, he was refurbished, and he was ready to roll. And he was ready to kind of carry the NXT brand from a star power. And I think they were in good shape with him here, kind of throwing him down here for a year and reintroducing the NXT audience to him, and really him bringing up the NXT brand to go against AEW one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. Finn Balor was one of those stars who, from the main roster, kind of got lost in the shuffle a lot of ways. He'd win championships, he'd lose championships, but he never really felt like the big deal that we all thought he would be. So him going down to NXT and kind of rehab himself from an image perspective and turn heel for the first time in WWE and become the superstar of NXT was definitely the biggest pro NXT had at that point. So you see Finn Balor going these feuds with some new blood, and then you see him have this wonderful NXT championship run that legitimately, if Jon Moxley was the ace of AEW carrying the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, you could say the same thing for Finn Balor around this time, because Finn Balor was putting on excellent matches with a variety of different opponents. You had Adam Cole, Pete Dunne, Kyle O'Reilly, Karrion Kross, even though people didn't really like Kross at that point. He really did deliver in every big time matchup that he was, and it really put a new fresh spin on the Finn Balor character as we know it.
If someone were to go back and someone's definitely going to do this in the future, but when someone goes back and re-looks at NXT from restarting the war all the way up to Portland in 2020, February, I think that they were loaded for those 6 months and they had a really good plan, and kind of that COVID really kind of kicked them in the dick in a way. But all that based around Finn Balor. And then I think a month later, we would get the spin kick on Johnny Gargano. Just awesome moment. Finn Balor's resume was really bolstered here, and he just did some of the best work in his WWE run during this time frame.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and the final one here for the AEW side of things is Kenny Omega defeating Jon Moxley at Winter's Coming to become the AEW World Champion. I believe he solidified his dominance here, kind of linking up with Callis. And was this the first time he was with Callis, or the first time he was actually with him is when he defeated Moxley?
This was the first time they actually confirmed them as partners, because before, when Kenny Omega and Adam Page split up, Don Callis would sit on Kenny Omega matches and commentate them because they're friends from back in the day, and we saw where that friendship led to, and that was Don Callis costing Moxley the AEW World Championship to Kenny Omega.
Was Kenny already the Impact champion, or he became the belt collector after this, correct?
This was the first belt he would collect.
Okay, perfect. So this is interesting. This in how much after this would the Elite kind of link back up with Kenny?
It would be a couple weeks, couple months max.
Cool. So this was like a frantic scene too, where Kenny won, and then there was an Impact tie-in, and then there was frantic energy at the end. What am I missing here, or am I remembering wrong?
It was more of, with Kenny Omega, this is his first mainstream heel turn in America or on national television. We've seen him before as the cleaner in New Japan, but we haven't really seen him as a heel in AEW. And it took a long time for Kenny Omega that we knew from New Japan to actually show up in AEW, because a lot of the Elite were handcuffing themselves, whether it was on purpose, whether it's not on purpose, to show that they weren't just in their positions just because of the power they wielded. Now we're going to see the Elite at full force. If you took away the power, took away everything, what is the Elite when you give them the opportunities that they deserve, for better or for worse? And Kenny Omega was at one point the best wrestler in the world in a lot of things. And the thing is, during this reign, he was so banged up, he was so injured, and he still performed at a top level that only few people can attain to.
Honestly, I didn't really necessarily love it. I'm not the biggest Kenny Omega fan, but I am 100%, I 100% respect him. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I was just like, it was cute. I thought that tying all the Impact stuff was interesting, but also kind of like, is it really working? I thought it was maybe this, perhaps, I don't want to say that this instant right here was kind of like a pivot in the AEW kind of momentum or kind of overall quality. I'm not sure, but I just feel like this was kind of the peak of it all with honestly, this Sting debuted this night. This is the first big show and Daly's place. This might have been the one. No, again, I fucked up with attendance. Never mind, ignore that. But overall, memorable moments. I don't know. You think this will be other people's number one?
Uh, it's hard to say. There's a lot of good things that happened between AEW Dynamite and NXT
Mhm,
during the Wednesday Night Wars. And of course, it's kind of tough pickings because a lot of these moments didn't happen with a live audience. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So it really just kind of depends on the eye of the beholder and how you view AEW compared to NXT and vice versa. It's
Yeah.
always going to be pretty uh, complicated when you put on nostalgia goggles and stuff. And I believe Kenny Omega winning the AEW championship, it will get people talking. You know what I mean? For better or for worse. So it's like it's called All Elite Wrestling, and what better person to forego the next step in AEW's legacy than Kenny Omega, the leader of the Elite.
I'm just interested. I'm curious where we land. I would take all of these in my kind of feeling after going through all of this would be like, this is a lot of A minus B plus moments. I don't
Mhm.
know if it's nostalgia, if we're not too far away, but I don't know if there's this automatic A plus. That is the one. I'm not sure if we have that here.
Well, again, AEW is still at this point was a very new show,
Yeah.
and it takes a while for shows to gain traction. You mentioned before the Dark Order attack that didn't really hit well,
No.
and then you had NXT where they weren't really grabbing the ratings they would have done, or they didn't expect their ratings to be trailing behind AEW like that. But again, ratings and viewership aren't everything. As we saw with WWE in '97, their ratings were below WCW's, but creatively, it was their best year ever. So for
Definitely.
NXT, they had a lot of great stuff going, like we mentioned before. The thing is, if you're not having an audience watch the product, whether that's in the building or on television, then you don't really know what's going on. So it takes time to build up to that point of popularity because it took WWE a long time to overtake WCW in the Monday Night Wars. So again, it's one of those things, different perceptions.
And yeah, it's give or take. I'm curious on what everyone else's 1 through 5 would be. Did we miss any? Because, like I said at the top here, we didn't really do our homework. We just kind of went off our feelings and our remembering of all of this.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'd love to hear the comments on everyone and see what they thought. All right, Richie, we will see you around and we'll catch you on the next one, buddy.
Sounds good. Thank you for inviting me once again.